There are many factors that can influence our experience of a live performance of classical music. The most obvious include the talents of the musicians and the skill of the conductor. But there are other, more subtle variables that can affect how we experience a performance. The creature comforts of the auditorium, its architecture, acoustics, and lighting can also contribute to our perceptions. Even more complex is the interaction of all of these variables. For example, some types of music are suited to some acoustics and not others. Let's see how these variables and their interactions affected the April 10th performance of the Omaha Symphony at the Joslin Art Museum's Witherspoon Auditorium. The Witherspoon is a wonderfully maintained Art Deco space that seats just under 600 people. It is rectangular in shape, with many marble surfaces. Large sound-absorbing panels hang at the sides and rear that are likely for sound absorption. The Omaha Symphony, paired to chamber orchestra size, takes the Witherspoon stage several times a year. Once the music starts, it is apparent that the acoustics are somewhat hard and tubby. In contrast, the Omaha Symphony's home at the Holland Center in downtown Omaha has warm and reverberant acoustics. Sunday's program was conducted by the young Spanish-American conductor François López-FERRER, who currently serves as an associate conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony and May Festival. The program featured 4 works of French and Spanish composers and 1 by Mozart. It began with Berlioz's Overture to Béatrice at Bénédict, an opera based on Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. The opera itself is rarely heard, but the overture is a staple of the concert hall. It alludes to several themes of the opera and is characteristic of Berlioz's brass-oriented orchestration. It is colorful music that on occasion threatened to deafen the listener, but it never became overwhelming. Kudos to Maestro López-FERRER for keeping in mind the Witherspoon's rather bright acoustics. Next on the program was Debussy's oft-played Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. This is a groundbreaking work that helped to define new directions of musical development at the turn of the 20th century. The story is of a faun being teased and aroused by passing nymphs. In fact, the dancer Nijinsky created a stir in the premiere by simulating on stage the faun's self-pleasuring. The work is structured as a long crescendo and decrescendo, mirroring the action on stage. The music begins with the flute evoking a humid, warm summer afternoon, growing languidly out of the forest vapors. The music eventually reaches a dramatic climax about 3/4 of the way through the piece. Unfortunately, this performance started too loudly, which gave the sound insufficient space to grow. The flute and other woodwinds lacked sensual articulation, which dulled the performance a bit. Had this performance been in a warmer acoustic space with less spotlighting of instruments, it might have been more successful. The next work was the Suite No. 1 from Defier's The Three-Cornered Hat. The composer, one of Spain's most important in the 20th century, was not particularly prolific, yet his works are characterized by driving rhythm, beautiful melodies, all with a recognizable Spanish coloring. López-FERRER kept a tight rein on the performance so that it was transparent and sharp. The dry acoustics facilitated hearing the inner details of the piece. Next was Chabrier's Fête polonaise, from the king in spite of himself. Chabrier was self-taught and was not bound by the rules of the Academy. He was a colorful orchestrator, but we mostly hear 2 of his works, España and the Joyous March. The Polonaise was the introduction to the second act of the opera. It is upbeat, with a central waltz-like section. There are several passages in the piece that felt like if they were given a slight nudge they would break out into España. Maestro López-FERRER kept everything appropriately lively and the Omaha Symphony played wonderfully. This was another piece that might have benefited from a warmer acoustic that might have softened some of its rough edges. The final work was Mozart's Symphony No. 39 in E-flat major K, 543. This is one of 3 final grand symphonies of the composer and is frequently performed and recorded today. Hearing the crisp loud timpani strikes in the introduction gave the listener notice that this was going to be an energy-filled performance by the Omaha Symphony and López-FERRER. The Witherspoon's acoustics suited Mozart well. Inner voices and sophisticated thematic development could be easily appreciated, and the Omaha Symphony strings precision playing stood out. This was a solid performance, probably the best of the afternoon. López-FERRER is a name to watch if this concert is any indication of his talent. It was apparent that the acoustics of the Witherspoon Auditorium flattered some works, and diminished others. Nevertheless, this concert was a mix of interesting music and excellent performances by the Omaha Symphony under guest conductor François López-FERRER.